Now, some Numsa delegates have staged a walkout during the union's interdicted Congress at the Cape Town International Convention Centre. Aggrieved members claim that the Constitution is being violated. Numsa's 11th National Congress is taking place despite a Labour court interdict. It's after the court found that over 30 officials were suspended unlawfully ahead of the event.
These delinquents, constitutional delinquents, who are violating the Numsa Constitution themselves, that expect employers to also walking out. Yes, this is walking out.
Well, for more on this, we're joined by Numsa's Eastern Cape Chairperson, Andile Bloko. Andile, good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Firstly, let's talk about the decision for this Congress to go ahead despite that court interdict. Irvin Jim said it was simply the viable and sensible option.
What is viable and sensible about defying the court ruling? What is viable and sensible about never listened to the requests that have been made earlier on about what should happen? You will recall that the conference, it does not take 5 days. It does not take 3 days to be convened. A conference is a product, even if it's an event, is a product of a protracted decisions and planning. The Congress was, in terms of its notice, given in December 2021 for June 2022. We accept that the Congress would have been convened in 2020 because the leadership that is at the helm would have been their leader sometime in 2020, because the Constitution provides that. None of us would want a Congress not to continue in 2022, because all of us have agreed sometime in 2020, 2021 to say beyond this COVID process, we need to renew the mandate. We can't stay beyond it. So the argument that we don't want a Congress is false, fallacy, and a perpetuation of lies. So what we did was to say, if the Congress has to happen, at a particular point, these are the things that must be done. We did that. We engaged in various constitutional meetings, and certain things were not done. To the extent that these things were not done, we then had to approach them. For example, one of the things that was a problem was that when we raised issues against the decision of the national unions, inside and internal, were called all sorts of things, plotting, faction, and that. We said, comrades, this has nothing to do with plotting. This has nothing to do with undermining the internal democratic processes of the organization.
All right.
So it's very important that we give that background, that there's never been to actually undermine the processes. Unfortunately, at some stage, there are so many people who are calling us, including workers, to say, look what's going on. But I'm responding now to the questions that we have raised. And I think that I could say that the spokesperson of Numsa is here. We need to deal with those questions.
All right.
Amongst other things,
Mr. Bloko, let me then just ask you to pause it there. Let me bring in the spokesperson for Numsa, Phakamile Hlubi-Majola. Phakamile, why have you gone ahead with this Congress despite the court ruling saying that it should be halted at least until the matters that are before the court have been dealt with?
Good evening, Kathy, and good evening to your viewers. Numsa has gone ahead with this Congress after very difficult deliberations with its structures because, as you know, Kathy, the judgment was handed down on Saturday evening. By the time it was handed down, we were already preparing to hold the Congress. In fact, many of the delegates had already started arriving as of Saturday. Some of them started arriving on Friday because of shortages of flights. So we had no option but to deliberate as we did yesterday with the Special Central Committee. Comrade Bloko and other regional office bearers were also present at that meeting. And in that meeting, we made it very clear that whilst we respect the decision of the court, there are aspects of this judgment that are simply impractical and unenforceable because of the wrong interpretation of the court in relation to Numsa's constitution. However, we felt, because the judgment was very clear, it said that Numsa can hold its Congress if it deals with certain issues. So we then took the decision to deal with some of those issues. One of those issues was the issue around the Credentials Committee. In the Special Central Committee, we dealt with the Credentials Committee. We appointed it in line with the requirements of the judge. And on that basis, we were then able to proceed. And we were very clear, Kathy, that why some of the why we had to actually take this decision is because we are in a situation where, as a union, we have to hold this Congress. We do not have the funds to redo this process in 4 weeks or 4 months' time, but we will try as much as we humanly can to adhere with some of the prescripts of what the judge said. So, for example, the judge had said, number one, that these comrades, the regional office bearers of Numsa, should be unsuspended because they had gone to court together with Comrade Ruth and Ntokote, arguing that their democratic rights to participate in the Congress and their right to contest was being undermined. So their suspensions were lifted. And we were okay with that. We were like, that's no problem. We accept the decision. We accept the decision to change the Credentials Committee. No problem. Where we had other problems, though, with this judgment was in the court's interpretation of the powers of the Central Committee. In terms of the Numsa Constitution, the Central Committee is the highest decision-making body between Congresses. It has the power to suspend, to lift suspensions. It has the power to change the Constitution. Now, what the judge said in that decision was that the Special Central Committee does not have those powers, only the NEC. You may not interrupt me, comrade. Nobody interrupted you. And that for us is part of the reason why we said we must challenge this decision, because the judge is basically saying that the Central Committee is subordinate to the NEC, and that's not true. And if you look at our court papers, Kathy, we actually state this clearly. Second, we also said that the judge erred when he said that the Central Committee does not have the right to place Mpumalanga under administration.
Phakamile, I don't want to get into too much of the nitty-gritties, but by going ahead with this case, is Numsa not opening itself up to further court challenges of whatever comes out of this Congress?
No, Kathy, because when you appeal an interdict, it suspends the effect of the court's decision. And we followed to the letter of the law the issues that we felt we could repair within a short space of time so that the Congress could go ahead. I think it's very important that viewers must understand that a Congress happens every 4 years. We fundraise for this Congress months in advance. There is no money available somewhere in some little pocket somewhere to redo this entire process. So we had to be practical. We implemented what we could implement, but those areas of the judgment that call into question certain powers of the Central Committee, we have to challenge because it actually affects the operations of the union. This judge made a decision, for example, that the Central Committee does not have the right to place Mpumalanga under administration. Mpumalanga as a region is dysfunctional. And in fact, they've collapsed both their regional congresses, and at the last regional congress, Mpumalanga asked to be placed under administration.
Right.
So when the judge handed down, no, I have to say this because these comrades have launched their attack on the basis of Mpumalanga.
Yes, but I'm asking you to keep it brief.
I'm still talking.
Keep it brief, Phakamile.
I'm still on the floor, comrade. I'm on the floor.
No,
I'm on the floor.
You're lying here. Can we explain?
You're interrupting me because you know I'm telling the truth.
Mr. Bloko,
you're interrupting me
Mr. Bloko,
because
just
you
give
know
her,
I'm telling
give
the
her
truth.
a couple of seconds
And
to conclude her thought.
So
yes,
respect
but
my time, comrade.
Phakamile, please conclude briefly for me.
I'm trying to stress why it was important for us to challenge this decision, because by the judge saying that we cannot place this region under administration, the judge is basically saying we must leave the region to be dysfunctional. Worse, especially when the region itself said that they wanted that.
All right.
So that was a decision that was wrong. We need to correct it. We have the right to do so in terms of the law.
All right.
And by the way,
just pause it there. Let me give Mr. Bloko an opportunity to come in.
No. There are a few things that are very wrong that Phakamile have said. And I accept that she might not understand how this union operates. The first of all, the Central Committee have no right to change the Constitution. This is what the judgment have said it can't do. And she repeats it here. He said the Central Committee has powers to change the Constitution. And it's wrong. It's only the Congress that can do that. And the Congress must, before you change you amend any constitutional clauses, you have to go through a particular process within the Constitution. The Constitution said within a particular period of time before the Congress, you must submit constitutional amendments. There are few constitutional amendments which we know. Some have not been submitted in due course. And some in the last Central Committee that Phakamile is talking about, they have said that they would, out of the blue, just want to amend the Constitution. It can be correct. Secondly, the issue that Phakamile is talking about in relation to Mpumalanga and other things. I mean, comrades, everyone can read. You know, we can read. The judgment is saying, Phakamile was in court on Friday. She could not even advise the legal office because she does not understand Numsa. She understands media. She does not understand Numsa and its tradition. She says the legal officer, she was asked, have this ever happened? She said, yes. The judge asked, is it in the Constitution? The answer is no. The judge is saying, say things that are in this Constitution.
All right. Mr. Bloko, we're running out of time for this interview. The point is that the Congress is going ahead now. It's taking place. What happens now for individuals like yourself? We saw that walkout today. What does that mean for the participation in the Congress? And are we literally going to see more court action here?
The simple thing, there was a court action. The court have ruled that this Congress is interdicted. So you can't ask me that people who think that they can continue. It's like you will realize that in a tradition, you don't continue when you are prohibited to do so.
Will you be seeking to hold them in contempt of court?
Exactly. This is in contempt of court, one. Secondly, it's just people sitting. For example, Phakamile was arguing that we are only 54. The people who are inside there are less than 1,000. And their friends who are not even Numsa. Numsa members are about 290,000 in good standing. Do they agree with them? I guess not.
All right.
You can have these people changing T-shirts, enjoying their stay in Cape Town. Do they form part of the majority of the people of the members of Numsa nationally? No, they are only less than 1,000.
All right.
So who are they?
We're going to leave it there. We're going to leave it there. Unfortunately, we're completely out of time for that conversation, Mr. Bloko, Phakamile, Hlubi. We're going to leave it there for tonight. As you can see, a very bumpy Congress it is for Numsa.